Hey there. Welcome to episode 9 of the Active Bariatric Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Tirapelli. Today, I want to talk all about plant-based protein that our, diet, which we often look at just looking at our animal proteins that we're often missing. And I wanted to talk about this today because I do get a lot of questions on plant-based protein options, but also after surgery, I get a lot of folks that do struggle with getting in animal-based proteins like, your meats or your dairy, even an intolerance to the taste of eggs even. So I wanted to talk all about plant-based protein sources today. Also, what supplements can help round out your diet if you are following a more plant-based diet and you want to make sure that you are meeting your protein goals. But also if you are training, there are some supplements that can be utilized to help specifically plant-based bariatric athletes. So let's dive in. So how is bariatric nutrition different for like a vegan or a vegetarian client? Well, as we all know, our diet is built around protein after bariatric surgery. And so we are constantly looking for, protein sources in our diet. We've got to hit our, minimum of 60 to 80 grams a day when we get our surgery right out of the gate. And so it can be challenging for a, vegetarian or vegan to really find enough plant-based protein sources that include all the essential amino acids, and also that they tolerate well right after the surgery. So it just makes it a little bit harder when you are cutting out, obviously, animal proteins from your diet. And I'll also just mention that, as you well know, when you're following a more vegetarian or vegan diet, which is going to have more whole grains, fruits, vegetables, etc., because of the higher fiber content, we can feel more full sooner after we eat a meal. So it makes it, again, more challenging not only to just get in our overall calories, but also meeting our protein goals through a variety of plant-based proteins. So it makes it a little bit more challenging. And so obviously for my vegetarian or vegan bariatric athletes, it is helpful to work with, whether it's your surgical center's dietitian or even working with me to help you really make sure that you are getting a wide variety of plant-based proteins to meet your goals. So what are some key nutrients that vegan or vegetarian bariatric clients need to focus on? So first off, what research has shown is that oftentimes in a plant-based diet, overall protein intake is lower. Okay. So we do have to make sure that when we are establishing this type of eating pattern, we want to make sure that we are getting a wide variety of different plant-based proteins so that we are getting in all the essential amino acids that your body doesn't make and that you have to get from food. We have to look at both the quality and the quantity of these protein sources. Oftentimes what we can find is that plant proteins are incomplete. So again, that means that they don't have all the essential amino acids. And so we have to make sure then again that we're looking at the different options that are out there to cover our bases. Branch chain amino acids, which are particular essential amino acids, these are really important for those of you out there that are wanting to exercise. And a specific branch chain amino acid, leucine, is really important for muscle protein synthesis. It's important for both growing muscle, but also for recovery. So again, we want to make sure that when we are eating a more plant-based protein diet, that we are getting in all these essential amino acids, and particularly our branch chains through different variety of foods. So where can we find, what foods do contain some of these branch chain amino acids? For example, leucine can be found in soybeans and lentils. Lysine and isoleucine, which are the other two branch chains, can be found in seeds, tree nuts, and lentils. Other just plant-based protein sources that you can add to your diet to help round out, for example, if some of you are like, look, Kim, I like animal protein. Like, why am I even listening to this episode? Because again, there may be phases after your surgery where you're not tolerating those animal-based sources as well. And so I think to really balance out and make a well-rounded diet, adding these plant-based proteins are, number one, helpful for you increasing your overall protein intake. Number two, when you eat more plant-based proteins, you are getting more vitamins and minerals in your intake. So antioxidants, phytochemicals that are found in, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, you're getting more of those when you're adding in plant-based proteins. So I want to make sure that throughout this episode today that you're really understanding that it's okay if you do still eat, animal proteins, that's okay. But for those of you that do want to learn more about plant-based proteins, this, knowing where you can find these foods and the nutrients are really helpful. So some more protein-rich sources that are found from plant-based options: pumpkin seeds, lentils, black beans or any beans, almonds, tempeh, tofu, oats, quinoa, textured vegetable protein, and your soy-based products are also going to give us a good variety of different plant-based protein options. Now, another nutrient that can be low overall in a vegetarian or vegan type of diet or just a plant-based diet is going to be fat intake. So specifically the omega-3 fatty acids, which we find in, for example, fatty fish, we can still get in those omega-3s, which are important for our body that we don't make, we need to get from the diet. You can find those omega-3s in oils, avocado, nuts. We can find it in seaweed, algae, chia seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, kidney beans, and microalgae oil. So you can still get those omega-3s in even if you're not eating fatty fish in your diet in those sources. But again, we do need fats in our diet as a bariatric client because you want to make sure that you're absorbing vitamins A, D, E, and K. Those are the fat-soluble vitamins that without fat intake in our diet, we can't even absorb those nutrients from our food. So we want to make sure that we are incorporating good heart-healthy fats into our diet. So do remember that those sources are helpful, especially for omega-3s. And I'll just add too that for those of you that don't eat a lot of fish each week, even taking an omega-3 supplement can be helpful because, especially for my more active clients, omega-3s are helpful for reducing inflammation in the body. So again, this is a helpful one that if you are exercising quite a bit, omega-3s can be helpful at about 1,000 milligrams per day. Again, I always just remind you, please speak to your doctor before you begin any new supplements. But as I go through these today, please keep that in mind first. Ask your doctor for any new supplements before you start. But these can be helpful for you as a bariatric athlete that's following maybe a more plant-based diet. So another nutrient that is of concern for a more plant-based diet would be vitamin B12. Because vitamin B12 again is found in your animal proteins, it's also a nutrient that, as we know as a bariatric client, can be low, okay, and can be not absorbed as well, right? So vitamin B12, the ASMBS recommendations for daily supplementation of vitamin B12 is 350 to 500 micrograms per day, or even 1,000 micrograms intramuscularly once a month. So what are some plant-based sources of B12 if you are not eating as much of the animal meats? You can find B12 in nutritional yeast, fermented soy, fortified soy and almond milks, plant-based meats, and fortified cereals. So remember too, as I'm going through these guys, there's a very important element of these vitamins for your exercise goals as well. So remember that vitamin B12 and folic acid are very important in red blood cell formation. And remember that red blood cells are what carry oxygenated blood to our muscles so that we can exercise longer, harder. So if you are chronically feeling fatigued, you definitely should look at your vitamin B12 and get a lab drawn. Okay. And I'll say that at the end today. You should be taking obviously your vitamin and mineral supplements every single day that are recommended from your surgical center. And also you should be doing your labs. They should not be something that you just go, oh, it has been, 3 or 4 years. I haven't had my labs drawn. These should be done annually at the very, longest space in between, definitely once a year, if not more frequently per your surgical center's guidelines. But B12, super important for bariatric athletes, for vegetarian or vegan bariatric athletes. So another nutrient that is low in a plant-based diet is going to be riboflavin, which is vitamin B2. The recommended daily amount is 1.1 to 1.3 milligrams per day. Typically, riboflavin is found heavily in dairy, eggs, beef, and pork and salmon. But in a plant-based diet, you can find riboflavin in mushrooms, almonds, and fortified cereals. So again, why is vitamin B2 or riboflavin important for bariatric clients? Remember that the B vitamins are very important for metabolism of nutrients. So carbohydrates, protein, and fats. They play very important roles in the breakdown of those nutrients in our body to produce energy. So if we are running low in even like vitamin B1 thiamine or B2, which is riboflavin, niacin, we won't be able to process our nutrition as well. And we won't be able to derive that that energy from those nutrients if we are lacking these vitamins in our diet. So again, if you're following a more plant-based diet, you can find riboflavin in mushrooms, almonds, and fortified cereals. Another nutrient of interest for both my plant-based bariatric clients as well as just straight bariatric clients is going to be vitamin D. So as you know, vitamin D is very important for the absorption of calcium to basically help with our bone density, with muscle contraction, for hormone production. Vitamin D plays a very critical role. In fact, even vitamin D has been looked at with reduction of depression. So we want to make sure specifically in the winter months, which we are in right now, when we are not getting that strong sun, which can help us produce vitamin D and off of our skin, that we are making sure that we're getting it in our diet. So the recommendation again by ASMBS for bariatric clients is at least 3,000 IUs per day of vitamin D. Now, if you are not taking in, vitamin D where you can typically get it in like your dairy products, you can find vitamin D in fortified soy milk, mushrooms, fortified cereals, fortified orange juice, fortified almond milks, and then lichen-derived D3 supplements. If you are a vegan and you don't want to take a standard vitamin D, you can get those in the lichen-derived D3 supplements. Lichens are just basically a fungus and an algae that have like a symbiotic relationship, and they are found in rocks and trees and in mountainside. So just in case you're wondering where the heck you get that from, but you can certainly get those type of supplements to help raise your vitamin D levels. Calcium is another mineral that is critical for bariatric clients as well as, if you're following a plant-based diet. So what are the recommendations for dosing for calcium? So if you have a vertical sleeve gastrectomy or a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass or even a lap band, the recommendation per day by ASMBS is 1,200 to 1,500 milligrams of calcium divided into 3 doses. So on average, most clients are advised to take 500 milligrams at breakfast, 500 milligrams at lunch, and 500 milligrams at dinner, divided into about every 3 to 4 hours. If you have the duodenal switch, the recommendation is a little higher for calcium, and that's 1,800 to 2,400 milligrams per day, again, divided into 3 doses. If you are following a more plant-based diet, you can find calcium in nuts and seeds, amaranth, beans, tofu, tempeh, edamame, and dark leafy greens. And I'll just highlight too, again, calcium and vitamin D are so critical for bone density and our muscle contractions. Calcium is important for heart contractions, heart function. So they play so many roles, guys. And we want to make sure that if you are following a more plant-based diet, that you are then getting in these nutrients besides your bariatric supplements that you should be taking. Make sure that you are getting these in your intake. So another nutrient of interest for my vegetarian or vegan bariatric clients, or just bariatric client in general, iron, right? Iron. We all hear about this. That whole iron deficiency anemia is kind of lurking out there. It's like, oh gosh, I've heard, a lot of folks, can develop that after bariatric surgery. Well, if you're following a more plant-based diet, it can be challenging to make sure that you meet your iron needs if you're not eating animal-based proteins. But luckily, we actually can absorb iron from our plant-based sources as well, or what's called our non-heme iron sources. So what's the dosing for iron? So ASMBS recommends at least 18 milligrams of iron per day for a bariatric client. But for menstruating females, or if you have a history of anemia, you may need anywhere between 45 to 60 milligrams per day of elemental iron. Elemental means the amount that your body's actually absorbing. So I bet you've looked at a label before and it says on the back, 350 milligrams of iron. You're like, oh my gosh, Kim just told me I only need, 45 milligrams a day. This says 350. So elemental is the amount that your body is actually absorbing. So typically when you look on an iron supplement, you will see in parentheses the elemental amount. That is the amount that your body's actually absorbing, and you will see that lower amount. So again, when you look on a label, if it says, 45 to 60 milligrams elemental, that's the amount of iron your body is actually going to absorb. So what are some plant-based sources of iron? You can find iron in lentils, chickpeas, beans, tofu, cashews, chia seeds, hemp seeds, and pumpkin seeds, dried apricots and figs, raisins, quinoa, and fortified cereals. I'll remind you again, as we're talking a little bit about vitamins and minerals today, remember to always separate your iron supplement, or if you're taking just a bariatric multi that has that iron in it, you want to make sure you're separating it by at least 2 hours from your calcium supplement so that we don't have an issue absorbing. They will interact with each other. And so you need to make sure that we are separating those so that you can absorb both optimally. And then lastly, guys, another nutrient that's of interest for a more plant-based diet is going to be zinc. And that is one also that bariatric clients can have deficiencies in. So the ASMBS recommends about 8 to 11 milligrams of zinc per day, but up to 22 milligrams if you've had a duodenal switch. And sources in your diet from a plant-based diet that will have zinc include beans, oats, wheat germ, nutritional yeast, chickpeas, lentils, tofu, walnuts, cashews, chia, hemp, and pumpkin seeds, and quinoa. So I know I kind of went through those quickly, but I wanted to make sure, number one, you understand that these nutrients can be an issue, okay? If we are not taking our bariatric vitamins every single day, and if you are a bariatric, athlete that is wanting to exercise and you're following a more plant-based diet, we have to make sure we're getting these nutrients in one way or another. Okay. So via your supplements as well as your plant-based sources. So what are some supplements that have been shown to be very helpful specifically for a bariatric athlete who is following a more plant-based diet? Let's talk about that. So first, let me just go off by saying supplements are meant to round out your diet. Okay. They are not meant to replace real food. Okay. So when we talk about these three supplements that I'm going to get into right now, guys, I want to just remind you, if you're feeling tired or you're struggling reaching your exercise or fitness goals after bariatric surgery, we're not going to just jump into throwing in some more, protein powder in. Okay. We're going to look at, number one, what's your overall caloric intake? How much protein are you eating per day? Are you strategizing around your workouts, meaning you're getting in carbohydrates pre-workout? After the workouts, you're recovering properly by eating carbs and protein, which I've talked about, the exact amounts in my previous episodes. So if you haven't listened to those, go back and listen to them. But we're going to look at sleep. We're going to look at hydration. We're going to look at a ton of things before we jump into adding supplements. Okay. I will say the only caveat to that would obviously be your bariatric vitamin and mineral supplements. Those are required daily, period. Non-negotiable. Okay. Required for life. But these supplements that I'm going to talk about right now will be in addition to what you're eating throughout the day to help you be able to perform a little bit better if you are having, new exercise goals. So the first one, because a lot of plant-based protein diets can be challenging in terms of meeting your protein goals because, again, as I mentioned earlier, they're typically higher in fiber, which makes us feel full sooner, meaning we can't really eat as much. It can make it more challenging to meet your protein goals for the day. So I do typically, when I'm working with my, a vegetarian or a vegan bariatric athlete, we do talk a lot about plant-based protein powders or bars that we can supplement into our intake to help really boost that protein intake over the day. So I do find, especially in the first year and early on, plant-based protein powders are, pretty much a necessity to help us meet our goals, to get to that, protein level that your surgical center has provided to you. So remember that soy-based protein powders, soy isolate, pea, rice, and hemp protein powders are all good options out there that can help you to meet your protein goals in a day. So those are that's one supplement that can be helpful in boosting our overall intake. Now, the second one that I want to talk about, you may not know much about, or you may have some, maybe you've heard some myths out there. So I want to really dispel these myths. So the second supplement I want to talk about today is creatine monohydrate. So let me just start off by saying that, again, don't start this without talking to your physician first. Also, if you have any renal or kidney disease, you absolutely should not start creatine without discussing it with your doctor or your nephrologist, because creatine supplementation can be something that's not good for someone that has renal disease. Okay, so I want to start off by saying that. But let's talk a little bit about what creatine monohydrate is. So first of all, creatine is a compound that is produced by 3 amino acids in our body: arginine, glycine, and methionine. Okay. Our body actually produces creatine in our liver and kidneys. And so it's not something to be afraid of, because I do get a lot of people that are like, oh, wait, creatine, isn't that like a steroid? No, it is not a steroid. Okay. We actually create it in our body. Okay. And typically, because animals also create creatine in their body, when we eat it in our foods, you can find creatine in meat, fish, dairy, poultry. Okay. So if you are following a plant-based diet and you're not eating those foods, then you are not getting creatine from, your diet. What does creatine do? Why am I even discussing it with a bariatric athlete? Well, when we begin to exercise, so let's say you and I get up right now and we start jumping up and down. Okay. The very first energy system that your muscles is going to tap into to create an energy source is the creatine phosphate system. Okay. It's an anaerobic system that your body will utilize first for very short duration, explosive, intense movements. Okay. So think jumping up and down when you're lifting, powerful movements in lifting. If you're doing a short sprint, this is going to tap into our creatine phosphagen system that creates energy. So why would we want to supplement it? Well, remember, if you have goals of gaining muscle or you want to increase that, intense performance that you're doing, maybe you're sprinting, whatever it might be. And if you are eating a plant-based diet, then you are not going to have high muscle stores of creatine. And creatine has been shown to be very important in enhancing high-intensity exercise performance, increasing muscle mass and strength. It's also been shown to be helpful in muscle recovery. It can help to reduce the risk of muscle cramping, because when we take creatine in, it actually draws fluid into the muscle cell, which keeps your muscles more hydrated. It has also, new research has been shown that creatine supplementation can help with bone as well as brain health. And there has been some research as using creatine during a concussion. So when someone has a concussion, supplementing with creatine, because they've shown that after a concussion, creatine stores in the brain can drop. So there's many health benefits that have been shown in the research by utilizing creatine. So for those of you then, of course, that are on a more vegetarian or vegan diet, then if you're not taking that into your diet, it can be helpful to supplement with creatine monohydrate. So what is the dosing for creatine? So there's two different ways to supplement with creatine monohydrate. If you are wanting to have a more quick saturation of your muscle of creatine, you can do what's called a loading phase. And that is where we dose with 20 grams a day divided into 4 doses of 5 grams for 5 to 7 days. Okay, so I'll say that again. 20 grams a day divided into 4 doses of 5 grams, and you do that for 5 to 7 days. And once you finish that loading dose, you just follow it with a maintenance dose of 3 to 5 grams per day. You can also saturate the muscles in a slower way by just supplementing with 3 to 5 grams per day for about 28 days. That's been shown to be the duration that it takes to saturate the muscles. So that would be the dosing of it. There has been no benefit to taking it, whether it's before or after your workout. The research out there is kind of equivocal in the timing of creatine. You can take it pre-workout or post-workout as long as you're just taking it each day and being consistent with it. There hasn't really been a benefit to taking it prior or after the workout. It has been shown to be best absorbed in the presence of carbohydrate. So if you take creatine, you can mix it into, for example, things like Greek yogurt, like a protein smoothie, your overnight oats, like hot chocolate or hot tea. You could take it with, if you want to mix it into your hot tea, you can do that as well. It doesn't have any flavor to it. And some of the brands that I've had experience with that I think are good brands, and again, I'm not endorsed by these companies or anything like that, but Clean Athlete, Thorne, Momentous, these are all NSF certified companies. And so that means that they are third-party tested for purity and potency, and there's no other like banned substances. So when I have in the past worked with, collegiate and professional athletes who have obviously, testing protocols that they have to go through with supplementation and so forth so that there's not banned substances, that NSF certification means that these substances have been tested and don't have any of those banned substances in them. So that's a little bit of information about creatine. So I'll just, again, summarize by saying if you are following a more plant-based diet and you're not taking in a lot of animal sources that contain creatine, this can be a beneficial supplement, again, to round out your overall intake. You cannot build muscle unless you are taking in adequate calories, taking an adequate protein and actually working out and lifting, right? Just taking creatine, guys, is not going to build muscle. Okay. But I can say that it is a good supplement to round out all your nutritional strategies and really specific for someone that's following a more plant-based diet, but it can help anybody. Okay. So even if you do eat animal sources, oftentimes the amount found in our animal sources in our intake are not going to be as much as you can just take in your supplement. Okay. So that's one supplement that can be, or I should say number 2 supplement that can be helpful for a vegetarian or a vegan bariatric athlete. And then another one is Beta-Alanine. So Beta-Alanine is basically, it's a supplement that you can take to help raise carnosine levels. Carnosine is an amino acid, and vegans often, or vegetarian diets will have, they find that these people will have lower levels of muscle carnosine. And carnosine is a dipeptide made from 2 amino acids, beta-alanine and histidine. And if you are not taking in meat or poultry, which are the main sources of beta-alanine in the diet, you aren't getting in that beta-alanine, which helps to create carnosine. And carnosine is important. Why am I even talking about this? Is because when you have low levels of carnosine, carnosine helps us to basically buffer excess protons that are created when we're exercising, which basically raises the acidity in our muscles and make us feel tired sooner. And so by buffering those protons, you actually can exercise longer, harder before you feel that feeling of fatigue set in. So when we supplement with beta-alanine, we can actually raise those carnosine levels in the muscle tissue, allowing you to exercise harder, longer, do more repetitions, see more gains. So what is the dosing for beta-alanine? 4 to 6 grams per day is what the research has shown to be the adequate dose. And that should be divided into 2 separate doses of about 2 grams or less for 2 to 4 weeks. So that's the dosing for beta-alanine. So I'll just tie this up with a bow. Again, beta-alanine, creatine monohydrate, plant-based protein powders, these can be used by someone that both eats animal protein or someone that's following more of a plant-based diet. But I will say one more time for those in the back, these supplements do not replace a good diet. Okay. So remember that after bariatric surgery, our overall intake is lower. So the first thing that I work on when I work with my bariatric athletes is obviously making sure we're taking in the right amount of calories to reach whatever that goal is that you have so that you are able to exercise on a consistent basis and feel good. We're going to look at your macronutrients like your carbohydrates, your proteins, your fats, and make sure we're timing those correctly. We are taking those in the right amounts each meal and per day. We're going to look at your fluids. We're going to look at the bariatric basics before we start exploring supplements. All right. So I just wanted to make sure I say that because, I don't want you to think that the first strategy that we're going to dive into is what supplements are we going to add, right? We're going to look at your diet first. Let's get that hammered home first. And then we will look at rounding out with some additional supplements to help reach whatever those goals might be that you have. So how do we maximize our results through nutrition? So after bariatric surgery, again, I can't tell you the number of folks that say, before surgery, chicken was my favorite thing. I can't even eat another bite of chicken. Or, Kim, I feel like now beef and pork sits really heavy in my stomach and I just need some more alternative protein sources that isn't just going to sit heavy and make me feel, sick or nauseated or cramping, whatever it might be. I get a lot of folks that become lactose intolerant after surgery. So again, a lot of the animal-based protein sources that we often rely on and that we will rely on down the road, sometimes we don't tolerate in different phases after surgery. So I really wanted to talk today about making sure that you are incorporating plant-based proteins because not only are you getting a, different option, if those animal sources aren't sitting well with you, but you're getting that bang for your buck where you're getting more fiber, which is going to help us feel full sooner, which again, down the road is we're looking at maybe our maintenance weight, what is going to help us feel full longer so that maybe it helps with reducing grazing or, wanting to eat an additional, snack, something later where we're just feeling like we need something more. Increasing our fiber in our diet is very helpful for increasing that satiation that we feel. Of course, as I mentioned, going to be much higher in antioxidants and phytochemicals that can help with our immune system, our hormones and antibodies. All these things are helpful when we eat a wide variety in our diet. And adding in those plant-based proteins are so, so important to really just helping us really make our diet as best that we can. And ultimately, I know that you've come through this surgery and you want to be as healthy as possible, right? We just went through this whole process. And it's important to really expand the diet, try to introduce new things. And I know sometimes you might try it and go, yeah, it didn't go well. Guess what? Try it again, maybe later. Give it a month. Give it a shot, down the road. Maybe look up some new ways to, try tofu or beans and lentils. What are some different ways that we can cook these foods to really bump up the flavor that, help us really tolerate them better, but just really enjoy them, right? With our families and with your own diet. So I just wanted to bring this up today because I know right away folks will see on the title like plant-based protein and people are going to go, oh, I don't want to listen to this. I eat animal products, right? But guys, it's so important to really know your options out there. I just wanted to finish off today with I get this question, hey, I am following a more plant-based protein diet and I want to start exercising, but I am feeling like I'm really having a hard time knowing where to start with my exercise and really knowing how to get my protein needs met on a more plant-based diet. So I'll just say, as I have mentioned in previous episodes about exercising in particular, start slowly. Okay. We're not going to jump right into weight training, the second week. We are going to build up a walking routine, after the first 6 to 8 weeks. And when you're cleared to begin a strength training program, we're going to build into that. And as you are increasing your exercise, that is where we are going to look at your nutrition and what we need to maybe increase in terms of calories, protein, carbohydrates, fats, etc., to help meet those increasing exercise goals. And as I mentioned earlier, eating a plant-based protein diet, we really have to make sure we're getting a wide variety of different protein sources in our diet each day so that we are getting in all those essential amino acids, and just making sure that you are really, liking all those foods, that you understand what other options are out there that incorporate those proteins and other vitamins and minerals. So start slow. We do what's called nutrition periodization, where we are going to increase our intake slowly over time. And again, I just want to highlight, if you are feeling like you're struggling with understanding what to have, if you are following a more plant-based protein diet, please reach out to me. I would be more than happy to help you develop a plan that will meet your needs and your goals after surgery. So thank you again for joining me today. I think today was more of like a shorty episode, but I hope that you found it helpful. And again, if you want to watch this full episode, you can follow my YouTube channel, which is the Active Bariatric Nutrition channel on YouTube. You can subscribe and give it a like. I love any comments that you can give because I think that helps me to know what interests you so that I can cover those topics. You can also follow me on Instagram at Active Bariatric, on TikTok and Facebook. And if you want to learn more about my one-to-one bariatric nutrition coaching services, you can go to my website at www.activebariatricnutrition.com. Check it out. Send me a message anytime. I'm here. And always just feel free to DM me anytime on any of those platforms. If you have questions, concerns, you're struggling with something, I'm here to help in any way that I can. I hope you guys have a great week. And guess what? We'll be back here next week. We'll chat again then. Take care.